It's no easy task setting up a wine business in a high school.
The Education Department has always taken a strong stand on drugs of any type, and alcohol is undoubtedly one of the biggest drugs that we have to overcome in Australia, if not in the whole world.
But Mount Vincent's headmaster, John Fittler, pushed for his vineyard as a vital learning key for the school. Planting and growing about a hectare of Semillon and Shiraz grapes has taught students not only agriculture and science, but also management and computer studies, even marketing.
You actually learn more by going out and doing practical experience than actually sitting in and reading a textbook.
Under the guidance of some local experts, the school has already bottled a Mount View White. It's expected a liquor licence, the first for a school, will come through soon, and up to 100 dozen bottles of wine will be put on the market per annum. The plan is to try and make up to $10,000 per year, all that money to be ploughed back into the school. The wine will only be on offer by order. By the way, students aren't allowed to savour one drop. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
More than 1,000 nippers took to Hawke's Nest for a packed program. Organisers are yet to tally the final point score. It seems Swansea Belmont, though, could mirror the strong showing of its senior teams at Nobby's Beach yesterday. Feature events today included the 14-year-old Ironman, taken out by Adrian Tobin of Swansea Belmont. Next home was Shane Broderick from Redhead and Dean Little, also from Swansea Belmont. In the 14-year-old Diamond Lady event, Tanya Clinton of Swansea Belmont led them in, followed by Jessica Kilmurray from Cooks Hill and Swansea Belmont's Jade Bruce. Curry Speedway driver John Pine made his first outing of the season a winner on Saturday night, taking the checkered flag narrowly ahead of brother Ron. Defending champion Don McEwen chased the Pines in for third place. The meeting also featured Australian champion Grenville Anderson and New South Wales champ Bob Brewer. John Pine, Brewer and McEwen tussled for an early lead, but Brewer was to pull out with mechanical problems. The win gives John Pine 8 points in the Cavalcade of Champions Series, but brother Ron and Don McEwen remain equal series leaders. The Formula 500s provided action earlier in the program. Driver Keith Knott was taken to hospital with a broken ankle and lacerations after this rollover.
Shane Barry and his 62-year-old father Vincent were getting ready to unload feed at their Bulladila piggery. Mary Ward truck driver Colin Cronin was helping the pair move an auger around near the silo when it hit overhead power lines.
As they were moving around, two were pushing the wheels, and the third fellow had hold of the head of the auger, and as it turned around it caught the high tensile wires above 11,000 volts of electricity, hit all three of the men.
Mrs. Barry, who was in the nearby shed, phoned for help. Shane was at the front of the auger. This burn mark is where he had hold of the machine. His hands and other parts of his body were severely burnt. He was flown to Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital in a serious condition. Colin Cronin was also taken to John Hunter by road. Vincent Barry is in Bulahdelah Hospital. Both are said to be stable. Power to the area was cut by electricity crews. The Workcover Authority and police are investigating. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Want them to drive the lift, just say so and we'll do it.
So 2 stops.
3 stops. 3 stops.
The court's decision just before Christmas was that all buildings constructed after 1920 could be demolished. However, those built before 1920 should remain for at least 6 months, while FAI, the council and local interested parties thrashed out their possible refurbishment. If nothing could be decided, then they too would go. FAI said today it has a responsibility under the Mining Act to rehabilitate the site and is acting in accordance with the recent court decision to make the area safe. The company also said today that all its efforts to arrange talks with the council had come to naught, and so it has resolved to go ahead with demolition under the terms of the Land and Environment Court ruling.
Despite last night's loss to the Raiders, Knights coach David Waite feels the team put in a solid performance.
The fact that we defended well with 11 men and 12 men and eventually paid the price for those sorts of things was still pleasing to see.
Waite was also impressed with individual performances by youngsters Jason Martin in defence and 23-year-old Carl Hill.
Carl's first experience at the cauldron of the Marathon Stadium and Andrew Tangatatoa's introduction to first grade for an 18-year-old bloke, so both very good.
The game highlighted areas needing work, one of those in defence.
Well, just the speed of the line, those sorts of basic bread and butter things that earn you turnovers and deny opposition ground. And
the Knights will play another trial game next weekend in preparation for their first Winfield Cup game against Eastern Suburbs in 2 weeks.
This vaccination has just been released on the market. It's one of 2 new drugs that protects against Haemophilus influenza type B, more commonly known as HIB or HIB. Prior to the release, babies could only be vaccinated against the disease at 18 months. Now they can be immunised as early as 2 months. A year and a half ago, Ray Hector and his wife lost their eldest son, Christopher. The 3-year-old developed a fever. He died 12 hours later. Ray says he hadn't even heard of HIB and believes the government could do more to make parents aware of such fatal diseases. Last year, 214 cases of HIB were reported in Australia. 5% of these were fatal. From July 1, immunisation against the disease will be introduced into the national program. And according to Dr John Stevenson, from next year, legislation requiring evidence of all vaccinations will be needed before a child registers at school. But for parents like Ray, it's a slow recovery from the loss of a child to a disease that could have been prevented.
NJC Secretary-Manager John Curtis and NBN's Mike Rabitt discussed the final details of the sponsorship deal today. Like many sports, the racing industry is also experiencing tough financial times, sponsorship playing a major role in the club's viability.
Well, it's not just crucial, Catherine, it's everything sponsorship, and in NBN's case it's particularly exciting for us that they're back into the fold, so to speak, because of their vast audience now with aggregation.
The deal serves as a dual benefit.
Racing is one of those industries that attracts many people and a very wide variety of people to the course, and indeed racing in general. We're very pleased to be associated with the Newcastle Jockey Club and renewing an association we've had for many years.
NBN first sponsored the Cameron Handicap in 1983, continuing through till 91. The race that year won by quick score and ridden by Jim Cassidy. Apart from the exclusive sponsorship of the Cameron Handicap, which has gone from an £800 race in its first year in 1935 to a $100,000 event today, NBN will also promote all meetings at Broadmeadow, plus one meeting at Cessnock and one with the Greyhounds at Beaumont Park. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Within the next month or so, around 450 children who are admitted to John Hunter Hospital or who visit the outpatient section will be tested for lead.
Principal processes will be to use children who are being admitted to the John Hunter Hospital for a number of reasons and who are having blood tests taken. And we will simply, with the parents' consent, do a blood lead level.
The test will be coordinated by the Environmental Toxicology Unit and will hopefully give the Public Health Unit an idea of the average lead level of children in the Hunter.
What we will achieve most importantly is to get some kind of baseline information which will let us know what the general population of children in Newcastle have as their blood lead level.
The study will also allow the health unit to determine those areas where children are most at risk, whether it be from industry, leaded petrol or leaded paint. Jodie McKay, NBN News. Ultipack is one of the oldest and most successful car window tinting companies in Australia. However, the company has had to make dramatic cutbacks since the enforcement of government legislation on window tinting was announced. Until last Friday, 18 people from the Newcastle area worked in the tinting section. Now half of them will join the ranks of the unemployed.
At this point in time, we've had to immediately sack 9 of our staff. We have 18 people normally involved in tinting around 100 cars a week or over 5,000 cars a year, and this week, since the news broke last Sunday about the enforcement of this old antiquated ruling in New South Wales, our business has dropped off to, I think so far this week we've tinted 4 vehicles instead of the normal 100.
Managing Director Paul Evans says he'll fight the laws which prohibit dark tinting on the front of windows. Meanwhile, he's left to salvage what he can of a business he spent 21 years establishing. The legislation comes into force on the 5th of April.
Horse riding is a part of the Australian bush tradition, and there's no one better on a mount than 2-time Olympian Vicky Roycroft. She's appeared in countless world show jumping competitions. The Newcastle show is high on her agenda.
I have a very long-range program to take horses away next year, and this is part of it. The horse I'm sitting on is a horse I hope that'll be an international horse in 12 months' time.
Vicky joins other Olympians John Fay and Rod Brown in the centre ring. Not too far from the action, another show personality, ring announcer John Nash, has more than 30 years' experience commentating at country shows, including Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. His golden tones have won him jobs in hundreds of radio plays, even work on TV programs like Homicide and Cop Shop. John is a proud supporter of the show. He says it gives the city a good look at country life.
There's only 6% of the Australian population concerned with primary production, and they produce 45% of our standard of living. Now, it's important for the other 94% of the people to know how important they are.
Gate takings are up $11,000 on the same time last year. It seems people are still keen to give the show a go. Tonight, cabaret, comedy and the Holden driving team.
Hamilton Wickham batted first and had their fair share of luck in reaching 5 for 172. Jason Bartlett top scored for Hamwicks with 73. Newcastle City were confident of getting the required runs and opened aggressively. Pat Kelly went on to make 42, but it was to no avail as City were all out for 156, 16 runs short of the required total. Motorcycle champion Chris Watson returns to the Newcastle Motordrome tomorrow night after suffering a horrifying accident a few weeks ago. Watson spent some time in hospital and is keen now to resume his battle with Tony Primer, Matt Paul, Rod Colquhoun and others in Saturday night's Show Week Solo Special.
When Ian Sinclair launched his campaign in the Armadale Mall today, he immediately embarked on an attack against the Keating government. Echoing the concerns of his coalition colleagues, Mr Sinclair maintained the nation is in the doldrums.
Despair that we've got so many in New England, young and old, who really now seem to have no chance of getting a job while policies remain as they are. We have to encourage investment in small business. I'm concerned about the survival of family farmers and those who are in small business.
But Mr Sinclair told onlookers a coalition government would change all that and provide help for his rural-based electorate. But Mr Sinclair admits not everybody understands the Coalition's plans for Australia's survival.
What worries me is that people genuinely don't understand that what we seek to do is to reduce the tax burden before imposing a GST, and it will not commence before October 1994, 18 months after the election.
53 vehicles, 100 people and 156 animals. The Grand Parade 1993, a kilometre of show tradition. It's one of the biggest days for the show, with bank and school holidays, and thousands of people flocked to Broadmeadow. But while the numbers were there, it seems the punters weren't keen to part with their cash. Sideshow Alley operators complained of a quiet day. The Show Association admits people are being careful with their money.
I think people still love to come to the show. When it comes to spending money, I guess there's some reticence there. And so unfortunately that impact is being felt down Sideshow Alley.
The sideshows are hurting with a continual run of free entertainment, both in and out of the ring. It was all too much for some. About a dozen people needed treatment for heat exhaustion. Storm clouds are threatening to slow the pace down tonight. There'll be more from the Holden driving team, the marching koalas and a display of fireworks. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
More than 140 local amateurs and trainee pros from Newcastle and Sydney lined up for the charity golf day at the Merriweather Club. The beneficiary, First Chance, an association formed by the parents and friends of young Hunter and Central Coast children who have a disability or developmental problem. Funds raised from the inaugural Pro-Am Day will be used to purchase equipment for Newcastle University's Special Education Centre, which caters for children with disabilities. While playing for a good cause, Knights captain Michael Hagan received a few golfing tips from Sydney's Sally Smith, who's one of only 2 female trainee pros in New South Wales. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Two of Australia's most dynamic boxing stars checked out the Newcastle Entertainment Centre this afternoon in preparation for the March 19 bouts. Troy Waters from the Central Coast will take on American Carl Sullivan. Waters has been training hard after a disappointing 1992 that saw him break his jaw 3 times. His welcome back to the ring will be by a man who regularly spars with Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran.
Because he's sparred with them doesn't mean that he's as good as they are, so, we'll test him out on the 19th of March and, if he's come to have a good fight, well, I'm sure we're going to get one.
The other fight on the card will be Spike Cheney and American Don Wilford. Cheney hasn't fought now for 4 months and is keen to get back into the ring.
I've been put out 3 or 4 times from various fights and at last I've got a fight and it's good to be in Newcastle.
Also on the card will be Newcastle's Craig Peavy in a lightweight fight against Johnny Lewis-trained Paul Nazrai. Promoter Bill Morty says if they pack the entertainment centre in Newcastle, the Steel City will be the venue for bigger international fights.
I know once we start, then the locals are going to get back into it. And you'll build up very good fighters. It's going to take a little bit of time.
It's expected around 6,000 people will turn up for the fights on March 19th.
21-year-old Damien Troy Davis of Armidale and 29-year-old Harold Bernard Wiggins of Emmaville were last week charged with murder, which police allege took place on February 14, 1990. Davis and Wiggins were refused bail and they were remanded to April the 6th. Also before the court were Philip and Robin Davis, both of Armidale, who were the proprietors of this Shell service station in Marsh Street. They were charged with being accessories to the murder and with drug-related offences. They were granted conditional bail to reappear also on April 6th. Police allege the victim was killed with a shotgun in the area known as Burralong Creek near Armidale. Investigations into the 1990 murder were stepped up last week after police received fresh evidence. They found skeletal remains in a waterhole in Burralong Creek and charges were laid. Police have still not released the victim's name.
In November 1991, Optus was granted a licence to operate following the federal government's decision to deregulate the nation's telecommunications market. Long-distance service is one of Optus's main products, and today it was launched in the Hunter and on the Central Coast. Lake Macquarie Mayor Doug Carley gave the service a test run, calling his parents in Canada. To access the long-distance service, a caller must dial the number 1 before their usual area code and phone number. However, not everyone in the Lower Hunter and Central Coast area will have immediate access to Optus. Access to Optus depends on Telecom updating local telephone exchanges. So far, about 70% of the local community can use Optus, but it will be 1997 before everyone comes online. Nationwide, Optus plans to employ 5,000 people by 1997. Optus Marketing Director, Mr Cleve Watley, says some of those jobs may be in the Hunter for maintenance.
These 3-year-olds have cerebral palsy and a special new friend. Gone is the crown and sash. Joanne Dick represents the new order in the Miss Australia Awards.
I'm the first Miss Australia under the new award, Miss Australia Awards, rather than the Miss Australia Quest. I think when people hear the word Quest, they just associate that with beauty pageant. That's why we had to change the name.
Hailing from Tasmania, the 21-year-old has embarked on a year-long promotional tour, visiting spastic centres across the country like the Stewart Centre at Crowders Bay. No stranger to caring for those with disabilities, Joanne's personal experience was the reason behind her involvement.
Well, my father had multiple sclerosis. He passed away 2 years ago, so I grew up in a family where I was one of the number 1 carers for him.
Part of Joanne's job is to encourage other young recruits to raise funds for next year's awards.
About 160 head of cattle have been entered in the trial at a feedlot at Canowindra in the state's southwest.
We've got from Holstein Friesians right through to Gelvies. We've got all the breeds: Belmont Reds, Red Angus, Black Angus, Herefords, Simmentals, Limousines.
40 feedlot operators and cattlemen have entered, including Marilba Station from Uralla and Moree Sundown Pastoral Company. The trial is designed to show live weight gain and market suitability of the product. The cattle fed on grain ration for 77 days. At the end of next month, the cattle will be killed at the Blaney Abattoir and their carcasses inspected. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
"20-year-old Dean Jones from Williamtown eats, sleeps and breathes cycling. He'd need to. He's riding around 1,000 kilometres a week, and that's just training. He's preparing for the national individual time trials in Canberra this weekend, an important stepping stone towards gaining a spot in the Australian team to compete at the World Titles in August. For the last 6 years, Dean nurtured his talents in and around Newcastle under the watchful eye of Mick Chapman. He cracked the big time this year when he was invited to the Australian Institute of Sport in Canberra. Mick Chapman believes Dean has the physical talent to take him places, but there's still an area that needs improving.
His weaknesses is well, it isn't really a weakness, it's just mental strength that you've got to keep building on each and every time, daily, weekly goals.
Dean knows all about goals, his ultimate to reach the Olympics and turn professional. But for now, he's keeping his feet firmly on the ground.
And being in the RS, you've got the eyes on you with the selectors and that, so you've got a foot in the door, but you can't sort of say, yeah, I'm going to the Olympics, because nothing's certain in life.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The idea of a 24-hour shopfront police station came up at a city centre meeting, concerned about the number of assaults, vandalism and graffiti around the inner city.
Young people coming out of licensed premises late at night sometimes forget that they live in a city and they make a bit of a mess of the place.
The City Centre Committee and Council will try to find an appropriate spot for the police base, but it's unlikely to be the former police station in Hunter Street, just outside the mall.
The old building wouldn't now serve the modern requirements of a police station, so these shop front exercises I'm sure are the way to go, and communication as it is now, it shouldn't be any problem for the police to operate out of those premises.
If the idea proves feasible, a second station at the west end of Hunter Street may be considered. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
The Gloucester Tops National Park is renowned for tiger snakes, but it's rare for a bite victim to die before getting help. But that's exactly what happened on the weekend. The body of a 53-year-old man was found by a fisherman about 6 kilometres from the Gloucester Tops caravan park. He'd been struck 3 times on the left ankle. Police believe he used his shirt as a tourniquet, but according to ambulance officer Alan Playford, the action may have cost him his life.
Now we know that the tourniquet method not only doesn't work but damages tissues if it's pulled on tightly enough and left there long enough.
The correct way to treat a snake or spider bite is to apply a constrictive bandage.
Placing the handkerchief or the gauze square, whatever we have, over the site of the bite and placing it there, 2 fixation turns of the bandage, and wind the bandage distally or toward the fingers or on the leg toward the toes. Place another bandage over the top of the one we've applied, wind it back up the arm, over the side of the bite, and back toward the armpit or the groin with the leg.
It's a simple method which Alan Playford says can and has saved lives. Jodie McKay, NBN News.